Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Philosophy for Philistines channel, also known as Politics for Plebeians, with your host, Bill Reimer. Today we're going to speak about why it is necessary to go to the source to discover why ideologies are toxic. The traditional left versus right political spectrum, which originated during the time of the French Revolution, does nothing to define the actual nature of the range of political opinion and how this impacts civil society and our system of governance. If we allow people who exist at odds with our philosophical position to determine the nature of what questions may be asked in a debate, we have already conceded defeat to our opponents. Toxic ideologies don't welcome or permit reasoned and honest open discourse. Those possessed of such ideological pathogens are trained to ask leading questions aimed at confirming their own ideological biases. By allowing them to frame the discussion, we are preventing the necessary analysis which could allow us to arrive at the root cause for problems which require solving. This necessitates independence of thought and respect for individual perspectives eschewed by social collectivists, since their ideological possession rejects anything which questions their sanctioned narrative. Which leads us to the witch hunts happening in politics today. Tamara Lich remains a political prisoner of the Trudeau government, while a murderer who was released on bail reoffends. Yes, imprisoning a Métis grandmother who objected to Trudeau's abuse while allowing a murderer to roam free to recommit violent crime is exactly what the Canadian government is doing. Without the rule of law, Canada is no longer Canada. Then we have the pillaring and mischaracterization of Pierre Polio, which some pundits are describing as Polio derangement syndrome. Well, we can expect this from those who can still support a government who is cratering the Canadian economy while destroying our energy sector and robbing us of God-given rights guaranteed in the Charter, but watching the Conservatives deal with the so-called progressive element within their own party is evidence of the complete lack of conservative principles held by many in the CPC elite. Worse than this, the entire conservative political spectrum is twisting itself into knots while attempting to answer questions from postmodern progressives. Questions which are aimed at turning conservatives into radical postmodern progressive ideologues. Politics here in Canada has entered the perfect political storm where few, if any, are asking the correct questions. Happily, Pierre Poilievre has remained relatively uncorrupted by this, and frankly, I wonder how he has managed to do so, given who are running for leadership alongside of him. But where to next? How do we steer a course for a ship already floundering on the shoals of economic ruin, with a sea of debt washing over its decks and its hull split through? A nation, a country, deliberately divided into pieces by its own government, leaving only the fractions of a riven nation. Every institution which we could once count upon to protect us from tyranny has now become the source of said tyranny. What is Trudeau, and where does his ideology originate? He is obviously incapable of original thought. Surely there must be puppet strings attached to this marionette, causing him to dance spastically with national ruin. As soon as his unworkable policies are questioned by the opposition or by the press, his puppet masters send him out of sight to stage left into seclusion where he can hide from the nation while refusing, as he and his cabinet always do, to answer questions which might address our ongoing national crisis. There is a reason Trudeau has expressed open admiration for China's basic dictatorship. Truth to a socialist means creating propaganda which can be used to advance their never-ending need for cultural revolution. Ideology, sociology, psychology, science, statistical measuring, media, entertainment, medicine, pharmacology, energy, and now crop production must be made subservient to the cause of the revolution. We have undergone a neo-Marxist restructuring of society from within the very institutions we entrusted to keep us free. And it all happened on our watch while we sat complacently by, allowing our way of life, our culture, our faith, and our families to be undermined. I recall being at a friend's gig in Thorold, Ontario, where I spoke with Scott Meyer, who was a tenured professor at Brock University at that time. I believe he's teaching in the States now. Nevertheless, he's also a saxophonist and a Marxist. I asked him on this occasion if he felt a revolution would be required to bring about his desire to create a Marxist society, and he answered me frankly and plainly that he believed it could be accomplished via the long march through our institutions. Hans was absolutely correct, and I had largely ignored what I ought to have taken as a warning. I subscribe to academy.edu, where I receive peer-reviewed academic papers on the most murderous ideology of which humanity has ever conceived, namely Marxism, and I do so in particular critical theory and cultural Marxism. And I do this for two reasons. Number one, if I'm going to criticize an ideology, then I need to understand why it's worthy of criticism, and specifically why it's earned my own execration. And two, to prove to others that when I write and speak about cultural Marxism and postmodernism, that I am not engaging in conspiracy theorizing. These ideologies are real and pose an existential threat to Western civilization, since these doctrines influence everything from the humanities to STEM. Moreover, to provide concrete evidence that we are witnessing an ongoing ideological war for the West, funded by our taxes and foisted on us by a corrupted and radicalized academy. From the academy, postmodernism and cultural Marxist critical theory has infected broader society and our government. Since they have called for a cultural revolution, those of us who care about such things as the rule of law, limited constitutional government, open discourse, and the integrity of the institutions which defend civil society, we must become the counter-revolution. I am saddened, indeed deeply disturbed, that Christians in particular have been so gullible and naive in the face of a neo-Marxist takedown of what was once known as the true North, strong and free. For we are no longer that, nor have we been for far too long for it to go unnoticed by as many as it has. There is only one way to address a woke world. Wake up. It's the only way. And it's our job to wake others up. Wake up.